Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Radha Madhava Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Jam Vishnupada Paramahamsa Privrajacharya Stotra Shad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jam Vishnupada Paramahamsa Privrajacharya Stotra Shad Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Radha Gopa Gopinath Shyama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Ganga Maya Ki Jai. Yamuna Maya Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So thank you everybody for coming today. We'll speak on Bhagavad Gita, chapter number 3. So, Karma Yoga. So this is chapter 3, text number 1. And I'll chant the Sanskrit and then we'll go on. Arjuna Uvacha.
Arjuna Uvacha.
Jayasi chet karmanaste matta buddhir janardana tat krim karmani gore mam niyojayasi keshava. Translation, comment by His Divine Grace, Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Arjuna said to Janardana, Keshava, why do you want to engage me in this ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than fruity work? Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, has very elaborately described the constitution of the soul in the previous chapter with the view of delivering his intimate friend Arjuna from the ocean of material grief. And the path of realization has been recommended, buddhi-yoga, or Krishna consciousness. Sometimes Krishna consciousness is misunderstood to be inertia, and one with such a misunderstanding often withdraws to a secluded place to become fully Krishna conscious by chanting the holy name of Lord Krishna. But without being trained in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, it is not advisable to chant the holy name of Krishna in a secluded place, where one may acquire only cheap adoration from the innocent public, excuse me. Oh, that's the Harinam party. There's a group of 70 people in the bus. They went on Harinam in this neighborhood. Yeah, it's parked right in front of the temple. Okay. Arjuna also thought of Krishna consciousness or buddhi-yoga or intelligence in spiritual advancement of knowledge as something like retirement from active life and the practice of penance and austerity at a secluded place. In other words, he wanted to skillfully avoid the fighting by using Krishna consciousness as an excuse. But a sincere student, he placed the matter before his master and questioned Krishna as to his best course of action. In answer, Lord Krishna elaborately explained karma yoga, or work in Krishna consciousness, in this third chapter. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militamya Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swamrupagadamaya Dadati Sva Padanti Kam Vanchakolptra Vishakri Pasandavevacha Vajitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so in this chapter, chapter number 3, we're going to discuss the art of doing prescribed duty as an offering to the Supreme Lord. It's called Nishkama Karma Yoga. And there are two different types of devotee, Sakama and Nishkama. Sakama devotees are those who are devotees of the Lord, but they have some material desires. But Nishkama are the ones who have no material desires. That's a simple explanation. And this is just quite an overview of the third chapter, so we'll go over the most important topics of the third chapter. So a living entity cannot independently acquire happiness apart from the Lord. That is a conclusion of the third chapter. And then the question arises, then how can we interact with him? How can we interact with Krishna? And here we see that Arjuna is confused. He's saying whether I should renounce or whether I should act and fight for you. So this is his confusion, this is his dilemma. And in a commentary, Srila Prabhupada talks about devotees coming to a secluded place and meditating on their own, trying to chant or meditating on Raslila. Sometimes we see that people might go and do that. But it's actually not practical. Srila Prabhupada says it's not recommended. It's artificial. This is not the way to become Krishna conscious. And it does not make anybody advanced. So, before we do go into such secluded place, we have to become very much mature in our Krishna conscious. Otherwise, going in a secluded place will be a very dangerous experience, because Maya is everywhere and Maya always dictates. So, we might unfortunately come under the effect. So we have to become mature. And even if we take an example of different saintly people, like within Christianity, there's Jesus Christ. He actually didn't renounce anything. He was practically working for many years. There's a term in Greek, it's called tekton. It means carpenter. He was working with his hands for many, many years, and he was preaching. So this is, we can take him as an example. So there's got to be some practical work. There shouldn't be any question of going into seclusion. We should remain in the city and preach Krishna consciousness. And because we do that, we will not be affected so much by Maya. We will be getting purified. The contamination will not touch us. And this is the way to become fully Krishna conscious and achieve perfection. Now, also, Krishna explains there are two classes of men that are distinguished by the nishta, the faith. And the first class is those who are inclined to understand the nature of the absolute truth empirically or philosophically. And they are called jnanis or sankhya yogis. And the second class are those who are trying to understand the supreme truth by devotion through karma or buddhi-yoga. And Krishna calls Arjuna anagha. He calls him, "O sinless one." It means that we should become... Arjuna was free. Oh, someone made it louder. We should become free from sin, and because if we're sinful, it's very difficult for us to understand Krishna. But devotional service is so pure and potent that once one is engaged in the practice, we automatically become sinless. Is that?
I raised the volume. Sorry.
You can't
hear you over here.
Oh, okay. Okay. Is this better?
Much better. Oh, wow.
Okay, very good. I'm sorry, I have a soft voice. Okay, so the whole process is we need to understand the real position of the self in relation with the super self, with the super soul. And there are direct process for that and indirect process also. And both processes are recommended, they're bona fide. But we see that Arjuna is already on a loving stage. He already expresses love for Krishna. So for him, direct process is the best. And for those who have a little bit of interest of reading Bhagavad Gita and understanding Krishna, that's recommended to take up the direct process. And in the 12th chapter, there's an indirect process, a step-by-step process. It is explained here that then begins with the renunciation, then knowledge, meditation, and then further realization of the super soul and Brahman. So this is what Bhagavad Gita is concerned with. Bhagavad Gita stresses the direct and indirect processes, but as I mentioned, everyone should try to engage in the direct method. It means completely surrendering everything to the Supreme Lord. And then Krishna says here in further text that everyone is first to act helplessly according to the qualities he has acquired from the modes of nature. Therefore, no one can refrain from doing something, not even for a moment. It's another point that premature renunciation, abstraining from prescribed actions, is not encouraged by Krishna. If we renounce prematurely, that means that eventually, sooner or later, we revert back to acting materially, because our heart is still contaminated. It's still not pure, and it's unnatural for us. So one who restrains the senses of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself, Krishna says, and is called a pretender. It's called mityachara in Sanskrit. Mityachara. Srila Prabhupada explained that this world without Krishna consciousness is simply sense gratification, nothing else. Some present different ideas in this way or that way, but it all boils down to sense gratification. Like sometimes there's capitalist or communist, but all it is just sense enjoyment. And sometimes we meet people who say that, I meditate sometimes, I do some 15-minute meditation. But when the meditation is over, these people continue engaging in in sinful activities. So it doesn't actually help anybody. There's an example with the Vishwamitra Muni in the Shastra, who was also trying to be a yogi, but before he was a great king. But then he renounced everything and went to the forest to meditate. And then Lord Indra, he sent a society girl to test his seriousness in meditation. They called Apsaras. So she came and she started dancing in front of him and singing. And you know, when the women dance, they have, I don't know what it's called, but they have different, not bracelets, but something that makes this ankle, yes, anklets, a sound. So, and when the women speak, when the Maharajis speak, it's so captivating, you know, their voice being so captivating. So this is what happened to Vishwamitra Muni. He was sitting and closing his eyes, but as soon as he heard the society, Menaka, society lady, he became captivated. And he embraced her, so everything was gone in a matter of just seconds. And there's many examples in Shastra like that. It is actually explained in the Bhagavatam that a woman's face is as attractive as a blossoming lotus flower in the autumn time. And your words, they give such pleasure to the ear, but if you study the woman's heart, sometimes it could be sharp as a razor, especially if there's a certain desire. Like there was also another example of Mother Diti and Kashyapa Muni. And Diti, her children actually they were Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. And so when they were killed by Lord Vishnu, actually Lord Indra requested Lord Vishnu to kill him. The Mother Diti, she was so angry, she wanted to beget a child who would kill Indra. And she, her husband, Kashyapa Muni, he was speaking with her, and she trying to captivate him by speaking and asking him to beget a child. And eventually he did so, but he requested for her to perform this vrata, this vow of, it's called Pum Savara. Does anybody know what does that mean? It's different ritualistic ceremony, and it's explained that there's different steps of practice. She had to follow in order for that child to. She had to follow that for a year in order for Kashyapa Muni to beget a child with her. It is explained here that she in the morning she would wash her teeth, bathe, and thus by becoming purified she would hear about the birth or mystery of the Maruts, and then covering her body with a white dress and being properly ornamented. Before breakfast, she would worship Lord Vishnu and Mother Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune. She would glorify Lord Vishnu. So this was there's some more details to that, but this was the offering she had to do. This was their agreement. And eventually, actually, by performing this ceremony, she became purified. And instead of begetting a child who would kill Lord Indra, there was actually 49 children who were, Lord Indra came and separated them into 49 pieces, and then they all became great devotees of the Lord. So that's another example in the Shastra. That the point of it all is that we shouldn't try to imitate. We should be in our position and try to follow rules and regulations, and then eventually by chanting we gradually become purified and we get the result. Srila Prabhupada said that we shouldn't be too hasty about making progress. It takes time. So a sincere person, he's trying to control his active senses by the mind. But how does he control them? He engages them in service to Krishna. And he performs karma yoga, but without attachment. So in further text, Krishna says, on the other hand, if a sincere person tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins karma yoga and Krishna consciousness without attachment, he is by far superior. Perform your prescribed duty, for doing so is better than not working. One cannot even maintain one's physical body without work. And there's a famous text about sacrifices. Yagnartat karmano nyatra lokayam karma bandhana tad artam karma kanteya mukta sangha samachara. Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed, otherwise work causes bondage in this material world. Therefore, son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and in that way you will always remain free from bondage. So, Lord Vishnu has designed this material world to encourage yajna, to encourage sacrifice. Everything depends on it, even our material advancement. So by worshipping Lord Vishnu, by performing sacrifice, this is the way to become purified. And there are many different sacrifices that is given in the Shastra. But when Lord Shiva was instructing Parvati, he said that out of all different types of worship, worship of Lord Vishnu is the topmost. So great devotees declare that the best type of sacrifice is worshipping Lord Vishnu. And human life is exactly meant for that reason, is to learn how to worship Lord Vishnu under the able guidance. And unfortunately, in this day and age, not many people do this and even understand the importance of sacrifice. So that's why we see examples of Srila Prabhupada, for instance, who comes here to teach people, to educate people in the worship of Lord Vishnu. And he said this, in our work we should never give up the aim of trying to please, trying to seek favor of the Lord. Yat karoshi yadashnasi, yat juhosi tadasya, yat tapasya kuntiya, tat kurushomadarpana, Krishna says in the Gita. This is, whatever we do, offer, give away, whatever austerity we perform, we should do this as an offering to the Supreme Lord. But at this present moment, in this age, we are forgetting, we're forgetting God. So we are acting whimsically. We're doing things that we want, and eventually these things implicate living entities in birth after birth after birth. Purusha prakritistohi, Krishna says, bhungti prakriti jangunan, karanam guna samgasya sada sadhyani janmaso. Means the living entity in the material nature follows the ways of life. Enjoying the three modes of nature, this is due to association with this material nature, and as he meets with good and evil amongst various species. And I was distributing books one time, and I remember meeting this two American ladies, and I showed them one of the texts in the Bhagavad Gita. I just told her, you can open any page and see what Krishna will say. And she opened a page, and it was a 15th chapter, Purushottama Yoga. There was a text that said, quite interesting, huh? In this month, she opened that chapter. Krishna says, foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spells of modes of nature. But one who's trained in knowledge can actually see what is taking place. And she was very surprised. She was just surprised to see that there's knowledge, they can train us, there's reincarnation. And she was so fascinated, she wanted to just take that book. And she gave a generous donation to Krishna and, took the book. So it was very nice. Just so amazing how just one text, one sentence can inspire people. It's really just something. And the other occasion I was distributing books today also. And I met one lady, and I was showing her books, Journey of Self-Discovery. I was showing her the pictures. And then I went on the picture of Srila Prabhupada. And I showed the picture of Srila Prabhupada to her, and she said, oh my God, I know this man. I've seen him before, she said. I've seen a documentary about him. She said, I went on the internet one day, and I put documentary about spirituality, spiritual meditation. And then she found that documentary of, I think it was the Acharya of Srila Prabhupada, and she saw it. And she got familiar with the Krishna consciousness, and she was very favorable. She also took a Bhagavad Gita. Quite surprising that people can just watch it on the internet. So we see that real happiness is possible only by yajna. That is the way of this world. And all the necessities of life are provided by demigods. And if we cooperate with them, we are engaged in this cycle of work, which is explained in the Bhagavad Gita. Supreme Lord comes here, but he doesn't just come. he also comes with the instructions, the Vedas, and they actually personify it. They live in entities. There's a planet where they reside. So this is the Vedas. They come, and if we understand the Vedas, we engage in our prescribed duties, and we start acting to please Krishna. We perform sacrifice, and then the demigods, being pleased with sacrifice, they send, they shower the rains. They give us the rains, and then the rains produce the grain. And sometimes we can just say that, or we can go ahead and just use normal water out of the sink and grow the grain in such a way. But it's not the same, because there's prana in that coming out of this rain cloud from the clouds. It's a completely much more natural product that comes out of it. The grain becomes much more potent for our health. So, yeah, out of rain comes the grain, and then the bhutani, so the living entities, they subsist on grain. But they don't just take it selfishly. No, they offer it as a sacrifice back to the Lord. And it's a very simple yet very sublime formula that helps us to accept the mercy of God in this way, accept the remnants. So the prosperity of this world doesn't depend on the efforts of living entities, of human beings. There's some background arrangements, so we have to be very cautious of that. The Supreme Lord is directly working through the demigods and supplying all the necessities to us. And this yajnas performed for that reason, to develop a sense of gratitude for the Lord. And in the Bhagavad Gita, in the first chapter, Krishna described different reasons why he didn't want to fight. There were 4 reasons. Does anybody remember any of the reasons? Maybe you can say what were the reasons why Arjuna did not want to engage in this war.
Cousins and brothers and teachers and
Yes, that's one reason. He was feeling compassion for the relatives. Then he was also foreseeing that there wouldn't be any happiness, even if the battle turns out victorious. That's another reason. And the third reason was that he was feeling that the sinful reactions would come upon him. And Krishna explains in the second chapter, he explains that these reasons are actually they're good reasons, but that still doesn't mean that you can just give up your duty. And then the fourth reason is that Arjuna was afraid that there will be harmful effects coming for the family. And the family will be involved in different irreligious activities, and like this there will be an unwanted progeny, unwanted population. And if there's unwanted progeny, that the qualities will not be of goodness, and they will forget the aim of life. That's another reason which is being discussed here in this chapter. And the main principle is that a self-realized man, Krishna says, a self-realized man has no purpose to fulfill in the discharge of his prescribed duties, nor he has any reason not to perform such work, nor has any need to depend on any other living being. So, by doing this living life in this, according to the cycle of sacrifice, we develop our Krishna consciousness. And like this, we may advance in spiritual life and become self-realized. And if a self-realized person appears in one family, he can save the whole family by giving that example, by acting in such a way that others might be inspired. Yad yad acharati shastas tat devataro jnana. Krishna says, whatever action a great man performs, common men, they just follow. So, and Krishna himself comes here, but he still acts in his internal and external affairs, just performing following the rules of the Shastra. He sets an example. He does not want to disturb anybody by acting in any different way. And we have many great kings who also in a course of time, set up a great example for the people. For instance, we have Lord Ramachandra or King Janaka or Maharaj Yudhishthira or Maharaj Prithu, who were ideal kings. They were Raja Rishis. And Raja means an ideal... Raja means like a royal king, and Rishi means a saintly person. And there was one occasion when a father, he had a son when Lord Ramachandra was ruling the planet, and the son, he passed away before the father, and so there was some confusion, and they came to Lord Ramachandra, and actually Lord Ramachandra was responsible for these things. He was responsible if there were problems with not enough foodstuffs or the weather. The king would try to help people if there's a severe heat. It is his responsibility to make sure that everybody, all the citizens in the kingdom are happy. This is not just to collect taxes, not to just actually to make sure that everybody is satisfied and happy. And in such a way, actually, if a king is righteous, he doesn't need to personally educate, individually educate everybody. Just by setting a good example, all the citizens will be so inspired that automatically everybody will be acting in a good way. But on the other hand, if a leader is sinful, then all the people in the kingdom will be engaged in different impious activities. And also another very important point in this chapter is that we should not try to imitate these great leaders. We should try to follow the instructions. Just like in Krishna consciousness, we accept the spiritual master, a guru, and we follow his instructions, because it's actually not possible for us to imitate them. And Krishna personally comes and shows that, for instance, at the time when he was lifting a Govardhan hill, or when Lord Shiva drank the ocean of poison, if we tried to imitate these things, it wouldn't be impossible for us. This is very unconventional activities, so it's not possible for us to imitate them. Ordinary persons cannot do that. So we just simply follow examples of our spiritual master or royal king. That is the way to become happy. And the purpose of Bhagavad Gita is actually teaches us to become subordinate to the will of the Lord. It says, Maya sarvani karmani sannyasya yatma cetasa nirashir nirmama bhutva yudhyasa vigatajvara. Krishna says, surrendering all your works unto me with full knowledge of me, without desires for profit, with no claims of proprietorship and free from lethargy, please fight. And by working according to one's nature, we set a good example for younger family members who otherwise may develop different irreligious habits and thereby lose the chance for spiritual salvation. So, to dissipate that reason, Krishna says, just do your duty and don't try to imitate others. Set an example. Try to inspire people to act in Krishna consciousness. And the last part of this chapter that we'll speak about is the lust, how to conquer lust, the greatest enemy of the people. And sometimes we might say that, yes, I understand there's different regulations in my duty, sacrifice, and there's happiness and everything like that, but there's some sort of force that I cannot fight against. It's so difficult for me to fight. And that force is called lust, kama. It is born under contact with the modes of material nature, and out of mode of passion, and then it transforms into wrath. And it's a devouring, sinful enemy of everybody. And the senses, mind, intelligence are the sitting places of the lust, and through them lust covers the real knowledge of living entities and bewilders them. Due to conditioned life, we're struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind, Krishna says, and that's all because of lust. The scarcity, the struggle is going on just because of lust. And there are different degrees of lust. We see that as fire covers smokes, it burns to some degree, so similarly human beings, they covered slightly, just like smoke covers the fire. Human beings slightly covered by that lust, and if we practice bhakti under the guidance of a spiritual master, we can get free from that. But there's also another level of discovering, just like a mirror covered by the dust. When you see that when the mirror is covered by the dust, it cannot properly reflect things. So this is a little bit moderate covering, more moderately covered. And this is the example given us in the beasts and birds. And then the thickest covering is of the embryo when it's covered by the womb. And inside, the embryo cannot even move or do anything. So that is the consciousness of trees. That's an example. And just to shortly explain the solution for this enemy, Krishna says that we can curb lust by following regulations of religious life. It means controlling our senses and mind. And by cultivating knowledge of the soul's real nature, this will give us strength to our intelligence, will purify our intelligence, and we'll be able to understand what separates us from knowing ourselves spiritual, and not only knowing but acting, how to act spiritually. So the solution is that we control our senses by following regulations of the Shastra, and also we cultivate knowledge of the soul's real nature by practical experience, by engaging in buddhi-yoga or Krishna consciousness Krishna conscious activities. So we should end here, and I'd like to see if you guys have any questions, please, or maybe comments, any corrections, anything you'd like to say. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you. Well, another story. I met another person today. He was. I came over to him. He was on his phone, and I offered him a book, and we talked for a while. And he told me, I have this problem. I have this one problem that I can't do anything about. He said, I can't sleep at night. I can't sleep at all, you know. And I knew from all the classes and different stories, different examples of other devotees that they start chanting, and chanting really helps. You know, if you chant, you know, we see devotees falling asleep sometimes. So I told them that you just chant this Maha Mantra, you just read this book, and this will help you for sure. And he said, sometimes people tell me, I just need any help that I can possibly find, so I'll try this. So he also took a book, and hopefully he will start chanting. Yeah. So yeah, thank you so much for your attention. Thank you for coming. Hare Krishna.
So we'll have then last darshan at 8:15, and 8:30, and it's a